At midnight, the rain hits the back alley of a high-end New York kitchen like static against glass. Inside, the dining room is dark, the burners are waiting, and a 10-inch Damascus steel knife rests against a whetstone. Then comes the sound, clink. Steel finding stone. Attention finding its edge. The executive chef has 12 courses to bring into existence before the night is over. Every plate will be judged. Every cut will be seen. And in the quiet before service, his real enemy is not the menu, the clock, or the rain outside. It is the thought that one slip can erase everything he has built. What happens to a person when perfection becomes a threat instead of a standard? This is where samurai discipline begins, not by escaping pressure, but by learning how to stand correctly inside it. The first confrontation is not with the ticket printer. It is not with the investors who expect the room to stay full. It is not with the critic who may or may not be sitting at table 7 tomorrow night. It is not even with the 12-course tasting menu taped to the stainless steel pass. The first confrontation is with the chef's own hand. At midnight, in that narrow strip of light between the prep table and the sink, his fingers know too much. They know the weight of the 10-inch Damascus steel knife. They know the balance point where the handle disappears into the palm. They know the angle the blade wants when it meets the whetstone. They know what it feels like when the edge is clean. But tonight, knowledge is not enough. Because fear has entered the room quietly. It does not kick open the door. It does not throw pans or shout over the rain. It comes in through the smallest opening, the thought that one mistake will travel faster than all his years of work. One uneven cut. One overworked sauce. One plate arriving at the table without the silence that great food creates. One slip, and the story people tell about him changes. That is the shadow in this kitchen. Not laziness. Not weakness. Not lack of talent. Fear of failure so sharp it starts pretending to be high standards. You can see it in the way his jaw locks before the first stroke. You can see it in the thumb pressing too hard against the spine of the blade. You can hear it in the clink of steel on the whetstone when the rhythm is almost right, but just a little too fast. The sound should be clean, measured, patient. Instead, it carries a small panic, hidden under professionalism. This is what pressure does to skilled people. It does not always make them collapse. Sometimes it makes them tighten. It makes them grip harder, move faster, check the same detail 3 times, and still not trust what they see. It makes the mind jump ahead to the ruined review, the disappointed owner, the staff whispering after service, the phone that stops ringing. The body stays in the kitchen, but the attention leaves. And for an executive chef, that is dangerous in a deeper way than the menu. Because craftsmanship cannot be performed from somewhere else. A dish is not built in tomorrow's fear. A knife is not sharpened in next week's shame. A 12-course tasting menu cannot be prepared by a mind already standing in the aftermath. Zanshin is the discipline of staying completely with what is here. Not in a soft, dreamy way. Not as an escape from consequence. Zanshin is alert presence. The kind of attention that notices the small shift before it becomes a large mistake. The kind that respects the edge because the edge does not forgive arrogance. The kind that understands that the smallest detail is not small when everything depends on it. In this kitchen, Zanshin is not a philosophy hanging on a wall. It is the chef noticing that his shoulder has risen toward his ear. It is the pause before the next pass of the blade. It is the choice to let the knife meet the whetstone instead of forcing it. Outside, the rain keeps hammering Manhattan. Delivery trucks hiss through wet streets. Somewhere above the restaurant, people are sleeping in apartments they can barely afford. Somewhere below, the subway throws its iron thunder through the dark. But inside the kitchen, the world has narrowed to steel, stone, breath, and the task directly in front of him. That narrowing is not weakness. It is command. The undisciplined mind says, think about everything. Solve everything. Protect the whole future right now. But the trained mind says, find the angle. That is the difference. Fear wants to make the moment too large to hold. It turns one knife stroke into a career judgment. It turns one course into a verdict on identity. It turns one service into proof of whether a person deserves to stand where he stands. And when a human being accepts that lie, the hands begin to betray the training. The cut becomes rushed. The seasoning becomes defensive. The chef stops tasting and starts proving. This happens outside kitchens too. A student sits with one exam and feels an entire future pressing down on the pencil. A young manager walks into one meeting and hears every old doubt in the room before anyone has spoken. A parent opens one overdue bill and suddenly the whole house feels like it is leaning on their chest. The scale changes. The mind inflates the moment until the body cannot move cleanly inside it. That is why the chef's knife matters. The 10-inch Damascus steel knife is not just a tool tonight. It is a mirror. Every line in the blade, every folded pattern in the metal, reflects the state of the person holding it. If he is scattered, the knife will show it. If he is hurried, the stone will hear it. If he is trying to defeat fear by squeezing harder, the edge will not become finer. It will become uneven. Craftsmanship exposes the inner life. Not loudly. Precisely. The chef looks at the prep list. 12 courses. Each one with its own timing, temperature, garnish, texture, and quiet demand. The first plate must invite trust. The middle courses must carry rhythm. The final course must leave memory. Every station has to move like a disciplined body. But before the team arrives, before the orders start, before the first guest lifts a fork, he has one responsibility. Make the edge honest. That is where confrontation becomes useful. Because fear is not the enemy only because it feels bad. Fear becomes the enemy when it steals attention from the one thing that can still be done well. The chef cannot control every review. He cannot control every expectation. He cannot control the weather, the market, the mood of a stranger with influence, or the private burden each guest brings to the table. But he can control the next stroke. He can control the pressure of his fingers. He can control whether he breathes before he moves. He can control whether he treats the knife like a weapon against failure or like a tool worthy of respect. There is a version of him that reacts without discipline. That version hears the clink of steel and stone and speeds up, as if urgency can purchase mastery. That version sees the tasting menu and starts mentally defending himself to people who are not even in the room. That version corrects imaginary criticism before the first carrot is cut. He becomes hard on the outside and unstable underneath. Then there is the version trained by Zanshin. That version does not deny the stakes. He knows exactly what this night means. He knows a high-end New York kitchen has no room for sloppy romance about effort. Plates do not care how much pressure you are under. Guests do not taste your intentions. The standard remains. But Zanshin teaches him to stop turning the standard into a threat. The blade goes forward. Clink. The blade returns. Clink. The wrist softens. The breath lowers. The edge begins to wake. There is no dramatic transformation yet. No music swelling. No sudden certainty. Just a chef alone at midnight, rain striking the windows, standing over a whetstone with the kind of attention that does not announce itself. This is the confrontation beneath every craft. Can you stay present with the detail when your fear wants to drag you into the outcome? Can you respect the process when your ego wants proof? Can you move with precision before you feel safe? The chef does not answer with words. He answers by adjusting the angle half a degree. He answers by listening to the sound until it becomes clean again. He answers by letting the knife remind him that perfection is not a place you reach by panic. It is an edge you maintain through attention. Discipline does not begin after you feel calm. It begins in the first second you realize you are about to lose command. For the executive chef, that second arrives before the first onion is cut, before the first sauce is warmed, before the first cook walks through the back door with wet shoes and tired eyes. It arrives with his hand above the knife, his mind already moving too fast, his future trying to crowd itself into the narrow space between steel and stone. So the first training is not movement. It is stopping. He does not stop forever. He does not freeze. He does not turn the kitchen into a temple or pretend the stakes have vanished. He simply refuses the first impulse. The impulse to rush. The impulse to grip harder. The impulse to prove, in one violent burst of effort, that he is still worthy of the room. He lets the knife rest flat beside the whetstone. One breath in. One breath out. The rain keeps hitting the windows. The refrigerator motor hums. A pan settles somewhere on a rack with a small metallic tick. Nothing has changed outside him. But something has been interrupted inside him. That interruption is training. The first act of Zanshin is to notice the mind leaving the room. He says it without drama, privately, almost coldly. Fear is here. Not failure. Not destiny. Not ruin. Fear. By naming it, he makes it smaller than command. It can still speak, but it no longer gets to disguise itself as truth. This is important, because fear in a high-performance room often wears the mask of excellence. It tells you that panic means you care. It tells you that harshness means standards. It tells you that if your hands are not tense, you are not taking the work seriously. But the knife knows better. A tense hand does not make a clean edge. So he begins with the body. He lowers his shoulders. He loosens his jaw. He places both feet under him, not staggered like he is bracing for impact, but grounded like he is about to work. He wipes the handle of the Damascus knife with a clean towel, not because it is dirty, but because ritual gives the mind a place to return. Then he checks the stone. Not the menu. Not the imagined review. Not the career. The stone. Is it wet enough? Is it stable? Is the towel beneath it folded flat so it will not slide? Is the edge meeting at the right angle? These questions are small enough to answer. That is why they matter. A scattered mind needs a doorway back into the present. The whetstone becomes that doorway. The blade touches down. Clink. He does not chase speed. He listens for truth in the sound. Too rough, and he knows he is forcing it. Too light, and he knows he is pretending. Clean contact has a tone of its own, a restrained scrape beneath the clink, like the kitchen is answering him in a language only practice understands. The second training is to anchor attention in one sensory fact. For him, it is the sound of steel on stone. For someone else, it may be the feeling of a palm against a desk before a hard conversation, the weight of a pen before an exam, the sole of a shoe touching the floor before walking into a room where judgment waits. The object is not magic. The attention is. He sharpens once. He breathes. He sharpens again. The mind tries to leave. It shows him the worst possible plate. It shows him a guest pushing back a chair in disappointment. It shows him his own name spoken quietly by people who expected more. The old panic reaches for the whole night, the whole career, the whole identity. He brings it back to the edge. Not angrily. Precisely. This is the third training, shrink the battle. A 12-course tasting menu is too large to hold in one breath. A career is too large to hold in one knife stroke. Perfection is too large to carry if you imagine it as a final verdict. So he does not carry it that way. He reduces the world to the next correct action. Check the edge. Dry the handle. Trim the herbs. Taste the stock. Label the containers. Set the first tray in order. Wipe the pass. Confirm the timing. Each action is small, but not casual. Small does not mean weak. Small means possible. And the possible action, performed with full attention, is how a disciplined person moves through pressure without being swallowed by it. He takes the knife to the cutting board. The board is white. The overhead lights are blunt and honest. The rain outside turns the kitchen windows into dark mirrors. He can see his own shape there, sleeves rolled, eyes focused, the knife in his hand no longer a symbol of everything he might lose. Now it is a tool again. That is a serious victory. He sets down the first ingredient for the opening course. His hand wants to rush because the clock is real. Midnight is not romantic when service is coming. There are reductions to finish, garnishes to portion, proteins to inspect, sauces to hold at the exact temperature where flavor stays alive. But speed without attention is waste wearing a chef's coat. So he chooses tempo instead. Tempo is different from speed. Speed is fear trying to escape time. Tempo is command moving through time. He makes the first cut. Then the second. The knife slides down, not slammed, not timid. Each cut lands where it should. The pieces gather in a clean line, even enough to show respect, imperfect enough to remain human. The fourth training is to turn repetition into ritual before stress turns repetition into carelessness. Every time he shifts tasks, he resets. Knife down. Towel across the board. One breath. Eyes on the next ingredient. This takes only seconds. But those seconds prevent the kitchen from becoming a blur. They prevent the hand from dragging anxiety from one task into the next. They create a small gate between actions, and at each gate, the chef re-enters the present. When the team arrives, he does not perform calm for them. He gives them order. There is a difference. He does not bark to prove authority. He does not soften the standard to be liked. He speaks in clean lines. First course prep on the left station. Sauces checked every 15 minutes. Garnishes covered. Tasting spoons ready. No clutter on the pass. Call out problems early, not after they become damage. This is the fifth training, protect attention by protecting the environment. A messy station creates messy thought. A missing spoon becomes a broken rhythm. A wet handle becomes unnecessary risk. A pan in the wrong place becomes friction at the exact moment the body needs fluidity. So the chef treats space as part of discipline. He moves a container 2 inches back from the edge. He folds a towel instead of throwing it. He clears 1 square foot of stainless steel and keeps it clear. He places the Damascus knife where it can be reached without searching, Blade turned safely away, edge respected, not worshipped. Craft is built from these unglamorous choices. No one applauds a dry handle. No one writes a review about a labeled container. No guest knows that a chef stopped at midnight, breathed once, and chose not to let fear steer his hand. But the plate knows. The team knows, even if they cannot say why. The room begins to feel different when one person stops leaking panic into it. This does not mean the night becomes easy. It does not mean nothing will go wrong. A sauce may split. A garnish may wilt. Someone may miss a call. A guest may dislike what was made with care. Zanshin is not the fantasy that attention controls the universe. It is the discipline of not abandoning the moment just because the outcome is uncertain. That is why the clink matters. Steel on stone. Hand returning to tool. Mind returning to task. Whenever the fear rises again, the chef does not argue with it for 20 minutes. He does not build a courtroom inside his skull. He returns to contact. To sound. To weight. To the exact pressure needed now. The edge of perfection is not held by obsession. It is held by return. Again and again, the chef comes back. To the blade. To the board. To the breath. To the next clean cut. And somewhere in that repetition, the kitchen stops feeling like a place where his career might be destroyed. It becomes what it always was beneath the fear, a room asking for presence, one precise action at a time. By the time the kitchen wakes, the rain has not stopped. It still strikes the windows in hard silver lines. The alley still shines black under the weak backdoor light. The city is still moving with that midnight New York restlessness, taxis hissing past the curb, sirens folding into distance, steam rising from somewhere below the street. Nothing outside has become gentle. But inside the kitchen, the rhythm has changed. Earlier, the room felt like a verdict waiting to happen. Stainless steel looked colder than usual. The menu on the wall looked less like a plan and more like an accusation. The 10-inch Damascus steel knife seemed to carry the whole weight of his name in its edge. Now the knife is moving through work. Not as a threat. As a tool. The executive chef stands at the board with his sleeves rolled, shoulders lower than before, eyes no longer jumping ahead to the final course. The blade comes down clean. Herbs gather in small green lines. Vegetables fall into even pieces. A towel is folded beside the board, damp at one corner, placed exactly where his hand can find it without looking. This is the opposite of the opening moment. At first, the clink of steel on the whetstone revealed his fear. It carried the sound of a mind trying to outrun failure. Now, when the knife touches the board, there is no panic hidden inside the movement. There is pressure, yes. There is consequence. There is the weight of a 12-course tasting menu in a room where people pay to notice everything. But pressure no longer owns the hand. That is transformation in the real world. Not fireworks. Not some perfect emotional silence. Not the sudden disappearance of fear. Transformation is when the fear is still present, but it has lost the authority to choose your next action. A cook calls out from the sauté station. A sauce needs checking. The chef turns, tastes, pauses. Not long. Just enough. The spoon reaches his mouth, and for one clean second, his whole attention belongs to that flavor. Salt. Acid. Heat. Depth. The sauce is close, but not alive yet. Earlier, that small imperfection might have hit him like proof. Proof that the night was already slipping. Proof that one weakness had opened the door to 10 more. Proof that the old voice was right when it whispered that one mistake could ruin everything. Now he does not build a story around it. He corrects it. A little acid. A lower flame. A clearer instruction to the cook beside him. That is Zanshin. The ability to see what is wrong without becoming what is wrong. Around him, the kitchen tightens into service. Pans lift and settle. Flames breathe blue under steel. Someone wipes the pass. Someone else calls back an instruction with the sharp obedience of a team that trusts the tone of the person leading them. The air carries butter, rainwater, herbs, hot metal, and the faint mineral scent of the whetstone still sitting near the sink. The stone is quiet now. But it is not gone from the room. It has already done its work. It returned the edge to the blade. More than that, it returned the chef to the moment. That small clink at midnight became a private bell. Each time his mind tried to leave, the sound brought him back. Steel. Stone. Breath. Action. Now the anchor has changed meaning. In the beginning, the knife on the whetstone was a symbol of danger. The edge could fail him. His hand could fail him. His career could bend around one careless motion. In the middle, The whetstone became a practice. A doorway back into attention. A way to shrink the battle until the next correct action was visible. Now, near service, the knife becomes a measure of trust. He trusts it because he respected it. And slowly, he begins to trust himself for the same reason. Not because he feels invincible. Not because he is guaranteed the outcome. No chef can do that. The guest may still misunderstand a course. A critic may still arrive with a private mood. A plate may still return unfinished for reasons no kitchen can control. But he has stopped trying to control the uncontrollable by abusing the controllable. He no longer grips the knife like fear can be squeezed out through the handle. He no longer treats perfection like a monster waiting at the end of the menu. He treats it like an edge, something maintained, not possessed. The first plate goes out. There is a silence at the pass before it leaves. That small silence every serious kitchen understands. The plate is wiped clean at the rim. Garnish placed. Sauce set. Nothing extra. Nothing begging for approval. The chef looks at it once. Not with desperation. With attention. Then he sends it. The dining room receives what the kitchen has become. That is the part most people miss about craft. The work carries the state of the worker. Not in some mystical way. In practical ways. A rushed hand leaves roughness. A scattered mind misses sequence. A frightened ego overcorrects. But a present person leaves order behind them. One course becomes two. Two becomes four. The night does not become easy. A towel falls. A cook nearly misses a cue. One component needs to be remade. The clock presses harder as the menu deepens. But each problem is now handled at its true size. Not inflated into identity. Not dragged into the whole fear of a ruined career. A problem is met. A correction is made. The team moves. This is modern samurai discipline in a kitchen with rain on the windows and rent due somewhere in the back of everyone's mind. It is not armor. It is not ceremony for show. It is a way of carrying yourself when the details matter and the nervous system wants to sprint ahead into disaster. It says, stay with the cut. Stay with the taste. Stay with the plate in front of you. The chef picks up the Damascus knife again near the final courses. The pattern in the steel catches the overhead light, those layered lines running through the blade like memory. He notices the edge, the balance, the familiar weight in his palm. Earlier, that weight felt like a burden. Now it feels like responsibility. There is a difference. A burden says, this will crush you if you fail. Responsibility says, hold this with care. When the final plate leaves the pass, the kitchen does not erupt. It exhales. The kind of exhale people make when they have been exact for longer than comfort allows. The chef sets the knife down, wipes the board, and hears the rain again, softer now only because he is no longer fighting it. He touches the whetstone once as he passes the sink. Cold. Simple. Patient. It does not praise him. It does not promise him anything. It only waits for the next time the edge must be restored. And that is the final lesson of the transformation. Mastery is not proven by one perfect night. It is revealed by the way you return to the smallest detail when everything inside you wants to panic. Perfection is not conquered. It is sharpened. Your kitchen may not have 12 courses waiting under cold lights. Your battlefield may be an office before a hard meeting, a school desk before a test, a hospital hallway, a late night commute, a family table where one sentence could change the room. But somewhere in your life, there is a blade on a stone. Some detail asking for your full attention. Some moment where fear says, rush. Grip harder. Prove yourself before it is too late. And that is where the training begins. Not in a perfect mood. Not after the pressure leaves. Right there, with the rain still hitting the glass, with the standard still high, with your hands still capable of shaking. Bring your mind back to the edge. If this lesson belongs in your life, carry it quietly. Practice it where no one sees. Mastery begins when the smallest detail becomes worthy of your full attention.